me ask you a question. If we sat down right now and reviewed the last 90 days of your business, could you clearly tell me whether you became more profitable, whether you created more time freedom for yourself, whether you generated more growth opportunities or had more growth in your business? Because those are three very different outcomes. And honestly, if you can't answer those questions with confidence, there's a good chance that you're maybe measuring activity instead of momentum. You're tracking what happened, which is helpful, but you're not tracking whether the business is actually moving forward and growing. Welcome to Weekly Momentum, the podcast for women in business just like you who are exceptional at what they do, but they never actually learned how to build a business around it. You built something successful, don't get me wrong. You've got clients, you've got revenue, you have people depending on you. But somewhere along the way, you became the system. Everything runs through you. Every decision lands on your desk. Every problem requires your attention. And while you're doing more than you have ever done before, it can still feel like you're kind of making it up as you go along. If you're tired of winging it, you're tired of feeling overwhelmed, and you're tired of carrying the weight of the business on your shoulders, then Weekly Momentum is the podcast for you. And in this episode, we're going to be looking at the next level of growth that doesn't come from doing more. It comes from making the CEO shift. And that's the shift from working in the business to working on the business. It's also the shift from doing to building. And it's the shift from managing today's problems to leading the focus, the direction, and your team to create tomorrow's results. Now, if you want to learn more about what the CEO shift is that I'm talking about, I've created a free training called The CEO Shift. You can grab it using the link in the description below. So now in today's episode of Weekly Momentum, we're talking about 3 metrics that every CEO should track every 90 days. Not just to measure their success, but to measure momentum. Because when you focus on profitability, time freedom, and business growth, you gain the clarity to know exactly where your business stands and what needs your attention next. I'm your host, the Get It Done Diva, Marianne Emma Jeff, and I'm a business strategist, CEO coach, and the creator of the Weekly Momentum System. I help business owners create more profit, more time freedom, and more momentum. When I sit down with most new clients and ask them, what are you tracking in your business? Their answer is usually not much. Not because they don't care, not because they're not smart or capable. They're just trying to keep up. They're serving clients. They're busy managing their team. They're solving problems. They're putting out fires and handling everything that comes with running a business. And if they're tracking a few things, they're often only looking at those numbers when something feels a little off, when maybe sales are down, or when the cash flow feels a little tight, when they're worried. And let's be honest, sometimes looking at the numbers feels scary, right? Sometimes it feels easier to keep your head down, stay busy, and just hope that things are working themselves out. But that's not leadership. That's survival mode. And survival mode keeps you reacting to your business instead of leading it. Now, as CEOs, even if you haven't called yourself that before, we need a different approach. We need a simple way to step back every 90 days and evaluate the health of our businesses. Not from emotion or a feeling, not from guesswork, not from even how busy we've been, but from a few key indicators that will tell us whether we're actually creating momentum. Because momentum isn't about doing more. It's about making progress in the right direction, in the right areas. And for me, there's actually 3 clear metrics that tell the story better than anything else. And as I mentioned earlier, that is time freedom, profitability, and business growth. When you track these 3 consistently, you stop making decisions based on how you feel, and you start making decisions based on what the business actually needs. So let's get started with the first one. The scary one may be the finances. The first metric that every CEO should be tracking every 90 days is their financial performance. And before you start thinking, I'm not a numbers person, I have an accountant, or I'm feeling a little uncomfortable right now, stay with me. I know some of you are squirming in your seat. That used to be me. But as the CEO, you don't need to become an accountant. It's okay. But you do need to understand the financial health of your business. Because whether we like it or not, the numbers tell a story. And for many business owners, it's a story that they're avoiding. Not because they don't care, because it feels overwhelming. In fact, when most business owners come to work with me, if they are tracking something, it's usually just one thing: how much money is in their bank account. Now, I understand why. It feels tangible. It feels so easy to just log in and check it. It feels safe, but it's also incredibly unreliable. The amount sitting in your bank account doesn't tell you what's coming in, what's going out, what expenses are just around the corner, or whether or not you're becoming more profitable. It doesn't tell you whether you're on track. It's just a snapshot in that moment. It's not a strategy. And there's something else I've noticed. Every year around tax time, suddenly everyone knows their numbers. They know their revenue. They know their expenses. They know their profits. They know exactly what happened in their business with their numbers. And then life gets busy again, right? Am I resonating with you here? The business starts moving fast, and before long, many business owners fall right back into the old habits and they stop paying attention to the numbers. That's why I encourage my clients to build a simple financial review rhythm, not once a year, not only when things feel stressful, every month. Because when you're reviewing your financials monthly, you can course correct quickly. You can spot rising operating expenses, for example, before they become a problem. You can see revenue trends before they impact your cash flow. And you can make decisions proactively instead of reactively. In fact, inside my 90-day strategic planning workshop, I teach a brand new 90-day roadmap that includes a dedicated place to track your key business numbers every single month. Because if you're only looking at your financials once every 90 days or once a year, you're often discovering problems long after they started. Monthly tracking gives you the opportunity to make small adjustments before things get too far off track. And the good news is this: it doesn't need to take hours. One of the things we'll talk about often here on Weekly Momentum is putting your CEO hat on for a few minutes every week and a few minutes to review your numbers, a few minutes to just pay attention, a few minutes of that CEO time to stay connected to the health, the financial health of your business is critical, because momentum isn't built through all of these massive actions. It's built through consistent awareness, small habits, and small course corrections over time. So every 90 days, when you create your 90-day roadmap, I want you to be asking, is this business becoming more profitable? Are revenue, cash flow, and profit moving in the right direction? Because if you don't know what's happening financially, you're not leading from facts. You're leading from feelings. And that's a difficult way to build momentum. Now, the second metric that every CEO should be tracking every 90 days is growth. Now, when most people hear the word growth, they immediately think about revenue. But as CEOs, we need a broader definition. Growth isn't just making money. Growth is actually increasing the capacity of the business. It's the business becoming more capable of serving clients, more capable of delivering the results in a more efficient way, more capable of handling the demand, more capable of growing without creating chaos. Because if revenue grows, but capacity doesn't, eventually the business starts to strain. The team members are going to become overwhelmed, which may just be you, and that's overwhelming. Service quality drops, the owner works longer hours, bottlenecks start showing up everywhere, and growth begins to feel heavy instead of exciting like it should. And that's why one of the most important questions you can ask every 90 days is, Has my business become more capable over the last 90 days? Can we serve more clients than we could before? Can we deliver the product or service more efficiently? Can we support growth without everything falling back onto me? Now, here's what I love about capacity. Unlike many things in the business, capacity is actually a number we can track. How many clients or customers can your business effectively serve? How many are you serving today? Then with those numbers, you can look at, are you operating at 50% capacity, 75% capacity, 100% capacity? And just as importantly, how well are you serving them? Because capacity isn't simply about squeezing more people through the system. It's about creating the ability to consistently deliver great results without breaking the business or burning out yourself and your team. And here's another really important question. Does the money match the capacity? If your business is operating at or near capacity, are your financials reflecting that? Are you being paid and being paid appropriately for the value you're delivering? Because sometimes the issue isn't that a business needs more clients. Sometimes it needs better systems, better pricing, better efficiency. And that's why growth and financial performance work hand in hand. Now, one of the tools that I use to evaluate growth is the business systems map that I use with my clients. I talk about it more in the free CEO shift training I was talking about before. It's also one of the core tools that we use inside the 90-day strategic planning workshop. And it's key because once you can see your business as this map of all the systems, it becomes much easier to identify what's actually slowing business growth. Using the business map, we can evaluate each of the 5 pillars of your business and identify where capacity is being limited. Where are the bottlenecks? Then we use a simple traffic light approach. Green means the system is working. Yellow means it's slowing things down. Red means it's actively creating a bottleneck or it doesn't even exist at all. And here's what I want you to hear. The goal is never to fix everything. That's impossible. The goal when you create that map is to identify the one bottleneck that's limiting growth the most right now, because every business has constraints. Every business has a place where work gets stuck, decisions get delayed, leads fall through the cracks, or projects slow down. Or team members maybe become dependent on the owner too much. And until you can identify those bottlenecks when they're happening and address them, growth is going to become much harder than it needs to. That's why I teach business owners to stop asking, what do I need to do next? And start asking, what system do I need to build next? Because CEOs build capacity, and you grow and you build more capacity. Operators create activity and do. Every 90 days, I want you to look across the 5 pillars of your business and ask, where are the systems that are green? Where are yellow? Where are red? What is slowing us down? What is throttling our growth? What's creating unnecessary complexity? And what system, if we were to put some attention on it, would increase our capacity if we improved it? Because growth isn't measured by how busy you've been. It's measured by how much more capable the business has become. That's the metric. Capacity. Has the business increased its capacity over the last 90 days? Because when the capacity grows or works more efficiently, sustainable growth becomes possible. The third and final metric every CEO should be tracking every 90 days is time, especially time freedom for the CEO. And here's why. Time is your most valuable asset. You can make more money. You can hire more people. And you can improve your systems as we just talked about. But you cannot create more time. Once it's spent, that's it. It's gone. That's why time and time freedom isn't just a nice-to-have metric. It's one of the clearest indicators of whether you're actually building a business or simply creating yourself another very demanding job. In fact, one of the things that resonates the most with people in the CEO shift training is if you are the system, you have no systems. And if you have no systems, you don't have a business, because a business is a profitable system that consistently delivers value whether you're involved in every step or not. That doesn't mean the business doesn't need you. It means the business shouldn't need you for everything. Because one of the biggest traps that business owners fall into is becoming the answer to every single problem. Every decision comes through them. Every client issue lands on their desk. Every process lives inside their head. Every bottleneck eventually points right back to them. And for a while, that can just feel normal, but eventually it becomes exhausting. Because no matter how profitable the business becomes, and no matter how much it grows, if everything still depends on you, you've simply created a very demanding job, not a business. That's why time freedom is such an important metric. It's one of the clearest indicators that you're making the CEO shift. One of the simplest ways to evaluate this is to ask yourself, am I spending most of my time working in the business or working on the business? Working in the business is the doing. It's the serving clients, managing day-to-day operations. You're putting out fires, you're responding to issues as they come up. Working on the business is the building. It's creating systems, reviewing financials, planning the future strategically, developing your team, improving processes, looking ahead rather than simply reacting to what's happening today. Now, both of them, yes, are important, but if all of your time is spent in the business, there's no space left to build it. And that's where many business owners get really bogged down. I go much deeper into this concept inside my CEO Shift training because learning how to intentionally move from operator to CEO is one of the most important transitions you'll make as a business owner. Let's take a moment and let's shift into the weekly momentum rhythm. This is where I walk you through the full weekly momentum planning process together. So if you've got your momentum planner handy, where's mine? Right here. You can grab yours at the shop if you want to go to getitdonediva.com. And if you don't have your planner yet, don't worry about it. Just grab a pen and paper and just follow along. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. As always, we're going to focus on what we're talking about today. And since in this episode, we were talking about the 3 metrics every CEO should track: profitability, growth, and time freedom, I want to use our weekly momentum process to help you evaluate where you are right now and decide where your focus belongs next. Because momentum isn't just about planning your week. It's about making sure that you're taking the time to evaluate if you're moving in the right direction. Weekly momentum, think of it as your reset moment, your chance to pause all of the busyness, step out of reaction mode so you can step into the next week and lead as the CEO on purpose. Now, the weekly momentum operating system is just a simple 4-step flow that gives you space mentally, physically, and literally on your calendar so that you're not operating from overwhelm, you're operating from intention. So together, we're going to move through all of the steps right now. Step 1 is rewind. So as you look back on the last week and you're rewinding, ask yourself as well, where did I create momentum? And what I mean by that is, did I improve profitability? Did I increase growth capacity for the business? Did I create more time freedom? And ask yourself, where did I lose momentum this week? And once you've done that, celebrate the wins, the little ones, the small little moments that you captured back a few hours of time, or the opportunity that you created by having an employee figure something out on their own or designing a system for it so that they didn't have to come to you to help them with it. Celebrate those wins and then learn from the things that you'd like to do differently and create do-overs out them so that you literally rewire your brain that going forward, you can handle those situations differently in the future. Because as a CEO, you review progress differently than if you were an operator or a single person operation. As a CEO, you look for patterns that create momentum. Now, step 2, realign. With this, when you're doing your big picture thinking, realign, remember, all it really means is to look at your bigger goals so that you're reminding yourself of your target and where you're heading. So you want to pull out your 90-day goals, like the ones that we set in the 90-day workshop, or any annual goals that you've set for yourself. And I want to ask yourself, of the metrics that you're tracking there, the ones that we've talked about today, which one needs my attention most right now? Profitability, growth, or maybe it's time freedom? Where is the biggest opportunity? Where is the biggest constraint? The goal isn't to focus on everything. You're going to make yourself crazy because there's always something to do in a business. There's always new things to build or improve. The goal is to identify the bottleneck, what matters most right now, as you're realigning and looking at the bigger picture. Then we move into step 3. This is where you plan your week. And if you've been following me for a while, you're familiar with doing your weekly top 10. Now, I don't always say this, but I do want to remind you that as much as we create a plan of our weekly top 10, I also want you to make it a habit that in the rewind step, you do your scoring of last week's top 10. Otherwise, we don't even hold ourselves accountable to what we've said we're going to do. It's important that in the rewind, you score your weekly top 10. And that way you can use that information to learn and grow and create some of the do-overs for yourself. And then, once again, as we're in step 3 and you're planning your week, you create a new weekly top 10 for the next week. Choose one weekly goal to go with it that supports maybe the metric that you've just identified that you want to put more attention into. And then maybe you build your top 10 a little bit about that metric. Maybe your focus is increasing profitability, for example. And so maybe this week you're going to be reviewing your pricing of your products or your expenses. Maybe this week you're focusing on growth and capacity. And this week you're going to pick for a goal one system, a little system that you're going to start to improve or fix or build or remove a bottleneck in. Maybe this week it's about creating more time freedom by delegating or documenting or simplifying or saying you're going to leave or arrive at the office at a certain time. Wherever you focus, make sure your top 10 this week reflects it. Now, finally, in step 4, this is where we plug it all into your calendar because otherwise it's just theory. We want to give those priorities a home. You want to schedule your CEO time. You want to schedule your strategic work hours. You can be using your ideal CEO schedule for this and using it as a template to see how this week can look as much like that as possible. You want to schedule time for strategic work, so that's working on your business. And you want to schedule the actions that support profitability, growth, and time freedom. Those actions, especially that you need to take around your weekly top 10. So you're not just creating a list, you're plugging into the calendar when you're going to do that. And one of the great ways to do that is to use Pomodoros. I have a whole playlist on my YouTube channel, Get It Done Diva, all about Pomodoros. But in a nutshell, it's 25 minutes of focused time blocking. And so what I like to do is I like to look at what I'm going to be doing, the weekly top 10, and identify how many Pomodoros for each of these so that I can start to get better at mapping out how long things take and plugging them into my week. You want to protect your focus blocks, your Pomodoros. It also, at this time when we're plugging in, all of these activities allow you to plug in and get your head in the game. Because momentum, it doesn't happen by accident. It happens when your calendar reflects your priorities. So this week and every week, activate the momentum code. Do you remember what that is? I talked about it in the first episode of this podcast. So if you want to hear all about it, you can go back to episode 1. But what it is know what you want, say what you want, and do what you say. It's everything that we've talked about today. It is the core of everything. It keeps us in a place of integrity and focus. Know what you want, say what you want, and do what you say. Now, for those of you who are really serious about creating more profitability, more time freedom, and more momentum in your business and growth like we've talked about today, I want to invite you to join me for my upcoming CEO Reset Weekend. And there's also a 90-day strategic planning workshop. Because here's what I've learned after more than 20 years of coaching women in business. Most business owners, they actually don't have a productivity problem. They do think they do, but they have a clarity problem. They're working hard, they're busy, they're checking things off, or they're putting things off. But the reason is they're not clear on what matters most right now. When we procrastinate, a lot of the time, it's because we're not sure what to do, not because we know what to do and we're not doing it. Or maybe it's because it's actually something that we in our gut know is not moving us in the right direction, or we're not ready to do. And that's exactly what we fixed during the CEO Reset Weekend. Together, we're going to step away from the daily grind. If you come for the whole weekend, you're going to rewind the last quarter. You're going to identify what's working, what's not, and create a focused 90-day plan for the next season of your business. We'll be using my brand new 90-day momentum roadmap where you'll score your business in 3 key areas, the ones we were talking about today: profitability, time freedom, and progress towards business growth and systematization. And then we're going to identify a handful of actions, projects, and systems that deserve your attention over the next 90 days. The goal isn't to do everything. Once again, the goal is to focus your attention like a laser beam on the bottleneck, on what creates the biggest results. You're going to leave with a clear plan, clear priorities, and a roadmap for the next 90 days. So you can start leading like a CEO of your business. So if you want more information about the CEO Reset Weekend, there's a few spots left. Or if you just want to come to the Sunday portion where we do the 90-day strategic planning workshop, you can do either. You just click the first link in the show notes below and you'll find out more details. Now, as we wrap up today, I want to bring us back to the question that we started with. If we sat down, you and I, and reviewed your business, would you be able to clearly tell me whether you've become more profitable, whether you've created more time freedom, and whether you've generated more growth opportunities, more capability for your business? Because those are 3 very different outcomes. And they're 3 outcomes that don't happen by accident. They happen when you stop measuring just your activity and doing, and you start measuring the momentum with those 3 metrics. When you stop reacting and you start leading, when you stop trying to do everything and start focusing on the things that really matter most. That is the CEO shift. And that's how businesses grow sustainably. Thank you so much for making me part of your weekly strategic planning habit. If today's episode gave you a new perspective, challenged your thinking a little, or helped you see your business maybe a little bit differently, make sure you subscribe if you didn't already so you never miss an episode. And if you know another woman in business who's working really hard but struggling to find clarity, send this episode in her direction. Because the more women who learn how to lead their business intentionally, the more impact we all create together. So until next time, keep building profitability, keep creating time freedom, keep increasing capability and capacity, and keep creating momentum. I'll see you in the next episode of Weekly Momentum.